Back in June, I actually built this UFC betting AI agent. And what this does is it will take any upcoming fight, it will look at the market sentiment, it will look at the odds, and it will look at the latest news, pull all that together, plug it into an AI agent and give you an output. And it will actually tell you which fighter it thinks has the greatest chance of winning. It will give you the latest odds from the biggest bookmakers, and it will actually give you a recommendation on who to place your bet on. So you can see that I plugged into a Telegram bot the fight between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. And then the outcome was basically a fight analysis. So it gave me the fight advantage, statistical highlights, betting odds for each fighter. It gave me a recommendation. So in this instance, it said that I should place a bet on Ilia Topuria, performance trajectory, and the final recommendation. Subsequently, what happened was Ilia actually beat Charles in the first round in less than 3 minutes. Now, what's interesting about this automation is that I actually used a n8n assistant to help me build this. And the assistant that I used for this was the n8n assistant GPT by, I think that's Nishka, not really sure. But I have nothing to do with this GPT. I'm just showing you exactly what I used to build this automation. And what's great about this is that this n8n assistant has actually been trained on all the documentation that's ever existed for n8n. And what you can do is you can ask it for any type of advice. So you can plug into the GPT an existing workflow that you're having problems with. You can give it some advice or ask it for some advice, and it will give you some outputs. So as you can see, I've uploaded the JSON file for this betting agent, and I've asked it to explain this workflow. And it's going to give you a complete breakdown within the context of n8n. And that's the most important thing here. It's not just a language model discussing JSON, which is what this workflow is built on. It's actually using the context of n8n. So all the nodes that are associated with it, the code that I'm using for specific tasks, and so on. And you can see here that the high level goal is this workflow takes a Telegram message with a UFC match prediction request, like John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, then pulls live odds from a betting API, which is what it does. It fetches historical fight data from Superbase. It gathers recent news articles. It uses OpenAI to analyze media sentiment, combines all that into final betting recommendation, and sends the result back into my Telegram chat. So this is what I've actually done, and this is what the automation does do. So it gives me a step-by-step breakdown of how the bot works, what's a trigger. It tells me that I'm extracting fighter names, and it gives me the code as well. And I actually use this GPT to create the code for these code notes. It gets the live betting odds. So I even asked it, where can I find free betting odds using, publicly available APIs? So for this, it actually suggested the odds API. Then I'm using a node to filter the data because I need the team names to match the API response for the extracted last names, purely because the odds API will extract all the odds for every single sport that's on their API servers. And obviously I just want it for this title fight. It then uses the historical performance stats. It will then look at recent media sentiment. And again, I used the ChatGPT to help me find a free API. And in this instance, I'm actually using News API, which is completely free. And the API has something like 500 calls per month, which is more than enough, right? So what I've done in this automation is to get articles for the last 14 days mentioning both fighters. And then I've got a node to analyze the market sentiment, which is obviously OpenAI. It tells me what language model I'm using, which is 4Mini, and it asks for a sentiment context summary and who the media favors. The data preparation then tells me that I need to convert the node into an array, purely because that's the way the information is just manipulated, and it's easier to manipulate it. And then it merges data sources, combines all that, and then it plugs it into the AI betting recommendation. And then it gives me the final output, which is HTML, and it's sent back into the Telegram bot. It also tells me which API keys are needed and what nodes I'm referencing. So I can go back into my workflow. I can click on, say, this code node here, which is convert to array. Now, for the most part, n8n is no code, and this channel promotes no code, but there are situations where you need code to manipulate the data. And that's because it has to be formatted, it has to be structured in a specific way, especially when you're dealing with third-party APIs. So what I did was I actually took this code and plugged it into this code node, and this was actually generated by this ChatGPT assistant. So if I go into ChatGPT and ask it to explain this code, it will actually tell me. And I can actually put some explainer text around this if I wanted to, right? So I could then go into here and say, update the code and add explanations. So now it's going to tell me that, step one, I'm getting all the input items, which is what it's doing. The step two is create an array for JSON objects by cloning the existing item JSON, which is what this part is doing, explaining all the properties. Now you don't even need to know this. But the point is, it's explaining it to you in a way that you can understand it, right? Because I know, like, programming code can be quite, tricky. It can be quite daunting when you first see it. But with something like this n8n assistant in GPT, breaking it down makes it super easy. What you can see here is I put in a prompt to say that I want to create a stock picking workflow that looks at market sentiment, overlaps it with free stock API, and then it gives me stock picking recommendations with the trigger being Telegram. So before it actually starts building it out, it will actually ask me a few questions. So are you a beginner, advanced user? I'm obviously an advanced user. Do you prefer the output as JSON or step-by-step instructions? I probably do JSON because then I can always tweak it inside of n8n if I wanted to. Once I know your preferences, I'll build a complete Telegram, a triggered AI stock picker that analyzes market sentiment from news via news API, gets a stock price from a free API like Yahoo Finance. This I have to double check sometimes because it's not always true. The AI does sometimes hallucinate, so I need to double check if the Yahoo Finance API is 100% free. But the point is, you want to keep your costs down to zero as much as possible. And so the next thing it's going to suggest is it uses an OpenAI for any LLM. So it knows that because I've been using this app for a while, that I actually pay for OpenAI's ChatGPT. And this is for the AI modules inside of all my AI automations. So I'll always recommend OpenAI in my circumstances. And so this is to merge sentiment, price, and trends. And then it basically sends a recommendation via Telegram. So I've actually asked it to build the automation for me. Once you accept the allow, which is just, obviously it's API at the back end for the ChatGPT, it will then give you a summary based on the Telegram stock picker. And so this is the output. And it will actually tell you the logic, the setup, right? It actually gives you the API as well, which is pretty cool. And this is the correct API, by the way, for News API, because I've actually used it in my UFC betting agent. And then for the stock data, it's suggesting the financial model group prep.com. I'm not sure, so I need to double check that, but it's super easy because you can just go to these websites such as News API and FMP, log in there, go inside, if it is a free sign up, get your API key, and then just add it to the end of the endpoint here. So once you have the URL, this is the URL that you're going to need to call the stock data, and you just put the API key on here. And then it tells you for decision making, even gives you a suggestion. 4.0 mini is pretty good. It's very affordable, super quick. Or you could even get away with 3.5. I'd probably just stick to 4.0 mini if you are going to do this as a live stock picking automation. And then it gives you the workflow JSON. It gives you instructions for the API key, so where you need to place that. And it even tells you about the Telegram credentials, and it will even give you bot replies for recommendations like stock analysis, bullish on earnings, momentum, and positive media sentiment. And then even tells you, would you like me to add support for multiple stock picks? So if you've got a 5 or 10 stocks that you're keeping an eye on, you can add that as part of this. Do you want to store the results in a database, which is what I recommend. So I really like Superbase. It's super easy to set up and it's free as well. Have a look at my UFC betting agent video if you want more details on how to set up Superbase, because it's super easy. And you can add a confidence scoring as well. So I always recommend that to kind of give it a scoring out of 10, on basis on the recommendation of the AI. So if it is really confident that the stocks will go up, that would probably be an 8 to 9 out of 10 and so forth. And if you like this video, consider supporting me by joining the Skool community. The link is below in the description. I've got a burgeoning group of AI entrepreneurs, people who are not sure where to start, what to do, or what kind of side hustle they could launch their new business with. Okay, so you've got a bunch of content inside of here, and we've got a classroom with courses. I've actually got a course on how to launch an AI agency from 0 to 16 days. So my background is I actually launched mine in 30 days. That was from inception to start, and I got my first client who paid me 30. So I got my first client who paid me $1,000 for a 3.5-hour project. And I'll show you how to do that in only 16 days. I've also got all the AI automations and blueprints. So everything I talk about on this channel. This is the AI sports betting system. You've got all the information here. You've also got the SQL code, and you've got the blueprint that you can just upload into your n8n. I've also got a ton of other stuff and automations that I don't talk about on the channel, which is just exclusive for this group. So the link is in the description below. Click on that. Just create a Skool account if you don't have one, and just follow the on-screen instructions. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Sign up to the channel if you haven't done so. Turn your notifications on, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.